From LALATE News Headquarters in Santa Monica, this is Mornings LALATE.
It's a big morning of Mornings LA with incredible great news about your fourth stimulus check update of 2021. In this recording, the president's set to return from Glasgow, Scotland, where he negotiated provisions that would impact that recon. He's returning back from Glasgow, and then he's returning also from the hills of Rome. And with that recon in play, today, breaking news. Great breaking news, as a recon vote could be happening by the end of the week. Yes. Nancy Pelosi signals that a vote on the recon could be happening by the end of this week. I have the latest breaking details on Mornings. Then, the roads and bridges and the recon will go together, says Pelosi and Jollop. All the latest in this recording. Get ready. Price tag will be 1.75. This is huge news across the board. I'll go over the latest details about what that price looks like for you. Programs in, programs out, more programs going in today. The latest details on more items being added to this recon by the minute, by the hour. Then student loan debt, more debt could be forgiven. I have the latest details on this and more. And then the big money for fifth stimulus right behind COLA, and this is right around the corner. This is 5.9%, but guess what? Because fifth stimulus is right after that. Those details and more as we got a huge morning's broadcast as the recon is going via vote as early as the end of this week. The latest details on that recon, the latest details on the programs, and the latest details on the missing bacon. Yeah, no, it's the toast is toast and the butter is butter, and bet you would think by the fourth recon I could at least have some bacon here. The big, bold, beautiful Mornings LA starts right now. Hey, good morning, everybody. I hope you're having a beautiful day. It's cooler here along the coast in Santa Monica, but the price is right. That is very cool. 1.75. All the latest details on that recon as more programs are going in today. More programs went in yesterday. All the latest details as a vote on the recon will be happening by the end of the week. This is breaking news. You're hearing for the first time in this recording. Student loan debt could be forgiven as well. That would go by executive order. And then fifth stimulus right behind that as well. The president returning from Glasgow, Scotland and Rome trip. And the latest details of that return means that recon is getting ready to get out the door. All the latest details of all the negotiations, all the provisions, all the voting. It's a big broadcast, and it starts right now from Santa Monica live. And this is LA, America's only 24-hour day, 7 days a week. Financial News Channel in America, live in the morning like right now, and taped in the afternoons. Coming up next is Noontime LA, and then a big new Afternoons LA show at 3 o'clock and Evenings LA at 5 o'clock. Expect the news cycle to change throughout the day, much like yesterday, where Evenings LA was totally different than Afternoons LA. Let's go over this incredible recon right now. It passed in a subcommittee, less than 3 weeks ago, at a price tag of $3.5 trillion. And while it's been reduced now to $1.75, it still pays viewers of this channel on average about $15,000. Yes, this is for you. This is for single individuals. This is for a married couple. This is for people with children, without children, people who are seniors, people who are young, people on disabilities, and people not. It's $15,000 spread across 3 clusters of checks. We're going to go over the status of each of the checks in each of the 3 clusters and those 3 add-ons, and it starts right now with the first cluster. The great news is that all the provisions of the third cluster survived. Hazard pay survived, and that is that earned income tax credit for 1 more year, the elder care for $4,000 a year, and the young money's children's elder care as well. They got the Pell Grant tax-free with additional $550 out the door. And then they got the money to repair your homes in there. Yes, if you live in a low-income community, they got it in there. They also got money in there for the CTC 1 more year, the child tax credit. And then they got an extension of the existing law for the bikes, cars, and trucks, all electric, all U.S. auto manufactured. 50% for the purchase of a new electric bike, $7,500 for an electric car. Personal use, a little bit more for business use. The first add-on, what's the status on that? Likely not to survive at its price point, but the other provisions around it are surviving. So that is that $25,000 for the purchase of your home, first home, not likely surviving that way. But the provisions about the home are surviving. And you're going to hear them later in this video. Stay with me. We have a big recording, a lot of details in this recording, and I'll be going over more about these provisions in detail later in this recording. But here we go to the second cluster with more money for the home. And that is the home repairs with the Weatherize Your Home. Let's go over the details of the other items in the second cluster right now and see what survived. So, paid leave and family leave passed, then did not survive, was removed, but reportedly coming back in. Household tax credit out. The household tax credit believed in there. Pre-kindergarten in, community college out. And money to weatherize your home, well, that, my friends, is in there. Did you look at the counter? Did you look at the counter? If there's a knock at the door and you answer the door and it's Chris and Sinema and you say, and she looks at you and says, it's September, it's November. Your response is, calendar Colleen does not live here. Thank you. I weatherized my home. There you go. Let's go. They got weatherizing your home in there. Let's go to the second add-on. It is huge. It's really exciting. It's great. It is the paid home health care. Wow, this is a lot of money. It is proposed at $250. They got a little bit less, but what again is this? It is for seniors and people on disability, free home health care. Wow, they got it in there. I'll have more details about this later in this video, but let's go to the third cluster of checks, the big battleground, and we have a lot of new details on this one on mornings. So here we go. Free school meals for all. They got it in there. Prescription medication out, back in. Then immigration form in, but coming out. Farming, I don't think it's in there, but I'm not sure. The free internet out. The clean energy, I believe, out. The money for the workers, like independent contractors, I believe, out. And then the Medicare expansion, somewhat in there. Let's go over some of those details right now. A lot of details in that section. Later in this video, I'm going to show you the prescription medication out. It should be in, out, back in. Very, very fluid situation. I'll give you the latest details on that. The immigration reform in, but maybe coming out, and a big battleground. I have the latest details on that. But the money for the seniors, dental, vision, hearing, they got hearing in there, not dental vision. It's likely to go in there as well. And they got expansion across the 50 states. More about that later in this video, which brings us to the third add-on, which is that MSC IRS monthly stimulus check. A lot of updates about that today. What's important to understand is that with the body of legislation, the recon likely to be debuted in bill format on a House floor as early as the end of this week. You're going to see the first body of the legislation. Now remember, it's not there that you would likely see the MSC IRS stimulus check. It's either after the House bill's debut, but before the House vote occurs, or on the Senate side. House members AOC, Omar, Pelosi have represented that can add it by amendment before House vote on the House side. But if they don't, then we have the senators. The two-day vote-a-rama is the first and most critical part of the equation for inserting that IRS monthly stimulus check. Who's in charge of the vote-a-rama? Chuck Schumer. Who's in charge of what's called for vote-a-rama? Chuck Schumer. And who represents he's inserting a monthly stimulus check provision? Chuck Schumer telling Donnie this week, telling Donnie's wife the week before, telling Dobby Applegate. And if you look over the history of the last few weeks, it's the senators more than the House members who represent. They're adding provisions in there. Coons, Casey, Warren, Sanders, Schumer, and Wyden. And people have been advocating. As Jennifer said yesterday in the live chats, how many calls did you make today? Need to advocate. During the morning's countdown today, one viewer said, why advocate? Why advocate? Because it looks like some things are not in there. If we were advocating, it would already be in there. By that equation, you would say, why is Bernie Sanders advocating? He's the guy in charge of the entire recon. He's the guy who came up with the recon. He's the guy who formulated the recon. And his dental and his vision is not in there. His prescription medication is currently not in there in the way he wants it. He's the guy who's the number one guy on the recon, and his provisions are not in there. So it shows you everything is a battleground. You have to advocate. And we have the incredible, encouraging statement from Bernie Sanders said on Halloween weekend. Saturday and Sunday. What did he do? He spent the whole weekend advocating on the phone. He said, I spent all Saturday working on the issue on the telephone, and as soon as I left the studio on Sunday for the interview he did, I went back home and I got on the phone to make sure they have the provisions in there. There you go. So with that, we go to the incredible statement of encouragement that comes from the chief of staff to the number one guy on the recon that says, you need to advocate until we're over the finish line. And that message is very loud and clear. Let's read it together and see what it says. It basically starts by saying how many they've received. They've now received, between the congressional senator offices, received more contacts of advocacy from the LA Purple Power than the number of signatures in the American petition, 3 million. Everyone's amazed by the outpouring of touching stories. Now they have been a better understanding of how Americans are trying to get through the pandemic. They have heartbreaking stories, and they have the voice of the people across the nation in you, LALATE, as you have become too loud to be ignored. Very, very kind. Let's read the last sentence on air together. Please continue your encouragement for the continued advocacy at the professional voice of the people you have become, and continue until this becomes law. Very important, especially if you see a recon potentially going for a House vote later this week, then there's the opportunity to advocate to put that recon provision in there after a House bill, but before a House vote. And if they don't take care of it on the House side, then you have those senators during the vote-a-rama. A lot of details coming up in this big broadcast today. In this big broadcast, we'll be going over the calling of the vote on the roads and bridges and the recon by the end of the week. Boy, here we go. Away we go. With the recon formulated, a finish line in front of it, the latest details is the price will be at 1.75. I'll go over a little bit about that, but more importantly, the program's in or the program's out. Latest details, you're going to be surprised. Then we turn to student loan debt forgiveness. More debt could be forgiven by executive order and fifth stimulus. That benefits are going up 5.9% under COLA raise, but get ready for fifth stimulus right behind it as Jay Powell testifies on Capitol Hill today and this week to talk about where inflation is going. I have all those incredible details as we continue live from Santa Monica, California on this big morning's LALATE. Here's a little bit about the community page. I'll be back with you in 60 seconds with this more breaking news. If you want money right now, not 5 days from now, and not 5 weeks from now, then reach out to the community page. The volunteers can help you find that money for rent and utilities. That's at news.la.com/community. The community page features a series of volunteers who are viewers like you. They can help you find rent, utilities, SNAP, food benefits, mortgage assistance, and help you with eviction moratorium questions as well. Their Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram individuals reach out to them and indicate the city and state you're from, and they'll get back to you shortly. That's a community page. Volunteers working for you, viewers helping one another. Stay with LA for more. Join LALATE Daily for the excitement of the new LALATE live daily. The excitement starts on mornings LALATE at 9 a.m. Home LALATE returns at 11 a.m. daily. And then afternoons LALATE at 1 p.m. Join us daily as the excitement continues live from Santa Monica on LALATE. And the excitement continues right now live from Santa Monica. The deal's happening on the recon. We're going to the finish line as the vote on the recon could happen by the end of the week. I have the latest details on this big morning's broadcast. The price is right, 1.75, but what does that mean for us? And what did we learn from Joe Manchin about the price tag yesterday? The latest details across the report. Then programs in, programs out. This is what we wanted to see. Which programs are in and which programs are out. You're going to be surprised. Then, the exciting details of student loan debt. More debt could be forgiven by executive order. I have the latest details on mornings live from Santa Monica. And then, fifth stimulus. Get ready, because 5.9% your COLA benefits are going to lift your benefits next year. But fifth stimulus is right behind it. I have those details and more as we go into a chilly morning today live in Santa Monica, but boy, it's heating up in DC. Those details and more continue right now. Subscribe. 400,000 subscribers, a YouTube record. I want you part of this incredible family. Hit that subscribe button right now. Like the video and consider becoming a member. Coming up next is noontime at 11 a.m. A big show. And then we got the 1 o'clock afternoon show. But boy, the 3 o'clock afternoon show and the 5 evenings will be big. Big news cycle, and the situation's changing by the hour. Let's turn over to the incredible details that are unfolding right now with this recon. The details we start today with are, number one, Nancy Pelosi representing that the vote on the roads and bridges and the recon will potentially start in the House as early as the end of this week. There we go. Where is the recon? What is it? What format is it in? It's currently in a subcommittee called the House Rules Subcommittee. It's a draft of the legislation. It's not the bill. It's a draft of what would be the bill. Nancy Pelosi has instructed the House Rules Committee to get it to out of the House Rules Subcommittee and over to the House floor for a vote by as early as the end of this week. Nancy Pelosi first put it to the House Rules Committee on Thursday last week, as soon as progressives said we want to see the legislation. Progressives and moderate Democrats actually said they wanted to see the write-up of the legislation. Yesterday, Joe Manchin had a press conference, and immediately what happened and ensued was much what you expect. Broadcast media trying to turn it into a reality TV moment, saying, oh my God, oh my Lord, did you see what happened? Oh goodness. Bottom line is he said much of nothing. It's what he's always said. And shortly thereafter, they had to backtrack, and they said it's consistent with what he's always said. It was consistent with what I always said. In fact, Senator Chris Coons, Democrat, Delaware, Joe Biden's always confidant, said senators always say the same thing. I will agree, I'm fine with the framework, but until I see the body of the legislation, I can't say yes or no. I need to see it written up in bill format. You saw just a second ago, I said that Nancy sent it over to the senators to start looking at the end of last week. Well, you saw over the weekend, and you're going to see more of it for the first time in this recording today, where I go through the provisions, the programs, and I look at them and I say, wait a second, why are the words permanent? Why are the words lifetime? Why did the Treasury Secretary say lifetime? Why were some of the provisions different than the deal provisions that were very much vocalized? We knew what the deal provisions were. Why is the broadcast media reporting it? At the time, I said yesterday, maybe the broadcast media got wrong. Now there's very much the possibility. Broadcast media report exactly what is in the draft of the recon, and it's exactly not what they agreed to in form. That someone wrote it up wrong. That's likely why Joe Manchin said the issue yesterday. To be even clear, when we look at the recon, the price tag of $1.75 trillion, we're looking at programs that are generally 1-2 year programs, $100-200 billion. Pretty simple, pretty simple. And so if you see a program and you see me read a quote that says the program is permanent, there's no program that runs permanent. And so something's wrong. Joe Manchin specifically said yesterday that he saw what was sent over to him as a draft of the recon was a so-called 1.75 that sort of looked like they were lifetime programs, that they would sort of renew automatically, consistently, indefinitely. Suddenly it's a $10-20 trillion recon and not a 1.75. Very, very fascinating across the board. But other than that, there was nothing much to be of surprise yesterday from Joe Manchin. And as one Democratic senator said, he could have done it in an email. Absolutely. Programs in, programs out is where I want to focus our attention, because that is where the money is. The money is right there. And the programs in and programs out, we start with the great news about prescription medication. On Thursday, the president had that press conference in the Oval Office, and prescription medication was not included, and we thought it was removed. We now learn it was not removed. It was not announced because it was not finalized yet. What had happened? Recon negotiations had prescription medication, reduction of prescription medication included on Wednesday for Medicare Plan B, which is for people's on diabetes, like insulin, very expensive medication. It was in there on Wednesday. By Wednesday night, the president called Krista Sinema one of the opponents to expansion of this, and she finally agreed. A big win for the president. She finally agreed to expansion of lower prescription medication across Medicare. She agreed. And with that, the president had a big win. But by Thursday morning, when it was announced, we thought it was out. Not out. So here we go. Where are we going? We are going over to Medicare Part D. Yes, the expansion of the lower medication costs will now include Medicare Part D, also negotiated prices, new rebates to you, and that the legislation is starting to mirror a very, very historic H.R. 3 medication bill with very similar provisions. Pallone, Murphy, Warren, Sanders, Klobuchar, and Kelly, all senators, all Democrats, have been negotiating the provisions day in, day out since Thursday morning. As Bernie said early in this video, he spent all day Saturday on the phone, and as soon as he got out of a studio interview on Sunday with broadcast media, he went back home and got on the phone to make sure the negotiations continued to have the provision in there. That's true purple power spirit. Then we have Pallone saying, I think we're very close. We're going to get a bill that has negotiated prices, and we're going to have different, and we're going to have people will be able to afford their medication. That one is going in. Number two, the second one is potentially going in there is paid leave. Later in this video, I'll go over the calculations of it. Joe Manchin, the opponent to it, he says it's very costly. Yeah, but sometimes you just got to do things. Why? Every country of the modern era that the United States competes against has this in their laws. We're the only country. We're behind the eight ball. We're not caught up. What is paid family leave? You have to stay home because your wife's giving birth to your first child. Guess what? On your dollar at the moment. Employer doesn't have to pay for it. Imagine you have to if you want to see the birth of your first child, you have to pay for it out of your own pocket. Then what happens if you're a single parent and your son breaks his leg? You have to stay home from work on your dollar. Employer does not have to pay for it. It's called paid medical leave. And Joe Manchin says it's just costly. Yeah, but if you don't offer something that every country around the globe that is first world countries are offering, and you don't offer it, you're not a competitive country. Your corporations are not competitive with their corporations overseas. There's belief that it's going to get in there, and that belief comes from legislators who are still pushing by the 11th hour, Gillibrand and Murray, New York and Washington, and they say they're keeping fighting to get that paid leave included. Number three, it's belief that SALT will go in there. What is SALT? This is a moderate Democrat provision. This is the cap on state and local tax deduction being lifted. Very important if you're in a big state like New York, New Jersey, Florida, Texas, or California. Introduced by Gothenheimer, the prom creator. It's a very helpful provision. It really helps a lot of people. And that provision it was reportedly going in there as well. Then we go to the last provision, which is the most polarized and also the most confusing provision. I'm seeing a lot of comments about it, which is the immigration reform. It's not immigration for new people arriving on the shores tomorrow. It's for people that have already been here. And that immigration reform provision is in there at the moment. I think it's coming out. Why? The Senate parliamentarian is to rule on it by the end of the week, and I don't think she's going to rule against it, much like she ruled against money for judiciary. That came out about a month ago. Now, as you look at these different provisions, let's do the running vote count. We all like the running vote count. Who's in favor? How is in favor? Could it go in there? Will they block the vote? Let's go over the details. First, let's go over the SALT, Gothenheimer, and the Goth Gang. There is enough of the Goth Gang in the House. These are House Democrats. These are House moderates. That their statement, they will block the recon unless it's in there. If they do block it, it would fall apart. There's enough of them. Now, if you've been with this channel for a long time, you've seen where people say, if you don't do it, I'm going to do this. And they just fold like lawn chairs. You've seen that. Number two, we have a new part of the equation this time around, which is you have the Bernies of the world who are very high level Democrats. They're not going to say block the vote because they can't. It's disrespectful to the leader of their party, the president. You have Gothenheimer, has no problem saying that. It's no problem saying that. So the Goth Gang saying they will vote against the recon if the SALT is not in there. On the other hand, we don't have anyone saying we will vote against it if it is in there. Let's turn to the immigration reform. Very, very fascinating. So on the immigration reform, we have some people who say they will vote against the recon if it's not in there. But reportedly, there are many more people who will vote against the recon as Democrats if it is in there. So there's more against its inclusion among Democrats than those in favor of its inclusion. And then when we get to the prescription medication, it is really just reading tea leaves. Hard to really say. I don't think that a Liz Warren or a Ron Wyden would vote in favor of the recon if the core, the progressive priorities were not in there. Let's go to a quote by Bernie Sanders over the weekend that embodies sort of the details of how do you deal with something if it's what you thought to do and then suddenly it's gone. Remember, Bernie's the guy who got you your recon, and suddenly his provision may not be in there. Let's go over the Q&A of how this happened. When asked about the omission of cheaper prescription medication, which is now going in, and the dental and vision, he was asked, are you going to support the recon? I cannot answer that question, he says. I'm going to do my best to make a big bill better, so I cannot answer that. There you go. Are you going to be adding provisions? Yes. And this is what's important to repeat. Where are these provisions being added? Let me explain this because I don't often explain it clearly enough. Currently, the negotiations are from the senators with fellow senators, but they're also communicating their negotiations with the House members. When you look at Pramila Jalapal, and you look at an AOC or Omar, they're not negotiating the provisions of the recon. They're very focused on the procedure. When is the vote? How's the vote? They're deferring to the senators to decide what is in, what is not in, and how it's done. They're hearing the negotiations, but they're not formulating the negotiations, if I can say. And so the House members, when the bill's debuted, it's going to be debuted on the House side, out of the House subcommittee where it is right now. If a provision's not in there, guess what? The senators are going to push to put it in there as well. Let me give you an example. Ron Wyden. Let me go right to Ron Wyden. Ron Wyden's provision, one of his big provisions, is not in the recon. It's not going to be added on the House side. Guess what? You know he's doing it by vote-a-rama. You just know. I don't even need to have balloons behind me and say the Ron Wyden vote-a-rama. You know it's happening. The deal's not done until the Senate acts. There you go. There's the quote. He says, who cares what the House is doing? It's until the Senate acts. He says there's a significant amount of stuff that still needs to be done. So if House doesn't take care of Ron Wyden stuff, Ron Wyden will take care of his stuff on the vote-a-rama. Here's what Bernie said. It's the best bill since the 1960s, but it has some major gaps. Americans are still sick and tired of paying for higher medication, and they need to cover their dental and vision. So there is the comment on that side. Will changes happen? Yes. Where will the changes? A lot may happen on the Senate side, not the House side. Most of these quotes are Senate quotes. Let's read the senators' quotes. Chris Coons, senator, Delaware, says, of course there's going to be dozens of proposals to make changes. Ron Wyden, we already ran his quote, senator. Then we have Jalapal, who says, senators are continually texting me to say they still are negotiating. There you go. AOC says, there's an openness and willingness to negotiate to look what it looks like from the senators. Then we have Senator Debbie Stabenow from Michigan says it's possible that more changes could be happening. You have Chuck Schumer dealing with the parliamentarian this week on the immigration reform. More changes there. And then you have Senator Chris Murray from Connecticut saying there will be changes and more changes. And with that, let's go to the developing details of the programs in and programs out. And a lot of strange, fascinating, great news on this one. First, if I say program in, it means it's in at the time of this recording. Or if I say out, it's at the time of this recording. Situation can change by the hour. Second, you're going to see in this recording for the first time ever that there are certain words that really cause red flags, meaning they don't look like 1.75 trillion. They look like $30 trillion. Something's going astray, and I believe this is what happened with Joe Manchin. He realized it as well, much like I realized it. Remember, the recon draft is in the Senate for them to look over right now, and if these errors are in the recon draft, that is exactly why Joe Manchin said what he said yesterday. You'll understand it as I go through each of the provisions right now. Pre-kindergarten, 1 year, got it in there, 3 to 4 year olds across the board. The child tax credit, the CTC, for 1 more year. It's $60,000. During the scope of the negotiations, they tried to bring it to $110,000. The report from broadcast media is that they're saying they're doing it at $150,000 for parents who make $150,000 or less, would be middle class, not low income. Here is the first indication something's going astray. Either, one, broadcast media is getting the reporting incorrect, or two, They're getting it right, and the person writing up the draft of the recon is not reflecting the result of the negotiations with the Democrats. This is why Joe Manchin's press conference yesterday said the so-called 1.75 with a lot of gimmicks to make these programs just go on indefinitely. Yeah, this is what I was causing big concern when I started to see words. The next one is very clear. Permanently changing Medicaid coverage to provide home care services for seniors and people on disabilities. No, wrong. It's not permanent. It's not permanent change. It's $100 to $200 billion. It's not permanent. It's 1 to 2 years. 1 to 2 years is not $100 to $200 billion. Permanent is, $700 billion, $800 billion. I mean, it's like $100 billion a year. So when we see this word permanently change Medicaid, who put that in there? Did broadcast media report it incorrectly, or is that actually in a draft of the recon that does not reflect the deal negotiations? There are so many incorrect statements in this that you're starting to see a trend line that perhaps Joe Manchin saw the same thing I saw. If you learned something from Joe Manchin in the last 7 days, he picks up on any error at a split of a moment. And I've been looking at these errors for a few days with you on camera, and I said, I don't understand where these errors are coming from. They may be not errors of the broadcast media, rather someone made an error in the draft of the legislation. Hearing care services would be covered under Medicare. That's correct. And then we have the money for the repairing the homes, $150 billion for the repairing of affordable housing. That's construction, rehab, improving more than 1 million homes across the board. Well, you saw the details about the cheaper medication being expanded. Let's go to the dental, vision, and hearing, because this one makes no sense. One of the things we're having problems sort of grasping is understanding who is taking things out and when they're taking the things out and how do they go out. When we look at this provision, this is one of Bernie's core babies. So would he agree to something that doesn't have it in there? He says, we're the wealthiest country that where people have no money for teeth in their mouth, cannot have hearing aids, cannot see. Any recon must have serious inclusion of those provisions and negotiation on them. Let's go over each of them. First, they're expanding Medicare across the 50 states where each state pays their fair share due to the great work by Warnock and also Claiborne. Next, are they dropping the Medicare eligibility age from 65 to 50 or 55? I don't think so, because we haven't heard about it. Third, dental, vision, hearing. 3 different things they want to add in there. Which one's the most expensive? Dental, then hearing, then vision. Really much cheaper. You would think vision would be in there. Why is vision the cheapest not in there? And the one that more people need? There are more people that need corrective eyeglasses than people who need hearing aid. Eyeglasses, $100 a year. An eye exam, $50. That's $150 a person. Not expensive whatsoever. But when you look at the hearing aid, it's not $100, folks. It's a lot more money. So why did hearing aid, which is more money and services less people than eyeglasses, vision, not get in there? Why did hearing get in there and not vision? Even stranger when you turn over to dental. Dental was supposed to be 10 years. President Bernie wanted it 10 years. Then the president said, I can't do 10 years. Let's do 3 years. Brought it down to 3 years. Then it's still too expensive at 3 years. So they said, let's just do it at vouchers of $800 a person. And then gone. $800 a person gone? That doesn't seem particularly expensive. Not particularly clear what's going on with that. Let's go over some of the other analysis across the board as to what provisions are in and what they're in and why they sometimes line up and don't line up during the scope of these negotiations. The first one, of course, is that CTC. You saw early in this video where I said to you that the notes coming out of broadcast media is the CTC has been expanded to people who make $150,000 or less. Excuse me? I never showed that number even during the negotiations. I showed them attempting 110, not getting it, and agreeing to keep it where it is at 60,000. 150 is middle class. Then community college out. Pell's grant expanded for tax-free an additional 550. Paid leave. This is very, very fascinating. Let's go over the paid leave. We talked about this earlier in this video. It was originally supposed to be, from Pelosi, 12 weeks for everyone, including self-employed and gig workers of all income levels, running as a 10-year program. That's a long time. And the price tag for 10 years, $500 billion. So without blinking an eye, the paid leave caucuses were fine with her dropping from 12 weeks to 4 weeks and shrinking the eligibility to just low-income employee W-2s only. Price tag, a mere 100 billion. 100 billion is nothing. There's almost nothing in this recon less than 100 billion. That's 10% of the recon. It's nothing. And Pelosi says our hope is to still get it in there. No explanation why it shouldn't be in there if it costs so little. Then the other provisions going in there, childcare, good, they got it in there. They got clean energy out. They got health insurance, good, they got it in there, which is cutting cutting the number of weeks, but still in there. Housing, a lot. Good news on this one. 175 billion, where third stimulus housing was only 47 billion. This is great news. And then the in-home health care, 100 to 200 billion. Yeah, you look at that number, 100 to 200 billion. It's not permanent. Well, how can it be permanent if it's 100 billion dollars? That's a year or 2 years. That's nothing. And there you go. Situation very fluid across the board. I'll have my commentary about what I think is happening later today. It's coming up in a second, but let's turn over to student loan debt. That student loan debt could go by executive order, as it's gone before. The president making an offer of additional $10,000 of student loan debt for forgiven, and the Democrats should take it. First, the president forgave student loan debts for people who went to work in the nonprofit sector across the board. Then the president gave student loan debt for people who became disabled after graduation. And finally, the big one was the president gave student loan debts for people who went into the public sector for 10 years after graduation. That's your city, county, state, and federal government. The $10,000 offer would be for everyone of all income levels and for all type of work. And the government, the Democrats should take it. At least for now. COLA raise. Boy, your benefits are going up 5.9%. By now, you probably received that letter that says your benefits are going up next year about 5.9%. But get ready, because fifth stimulus is right behind it. Jay Powell, the head of Federal Reserve, will be testifying on Capitol Hill today and tomorrow. And what is he going to be asked about? Inflation. It's going up. He said it would be going up. But will it be permanent? No, but it won't be going back down to nothing. It's likely to get worse, and then it's supposed to come back down next year to pre-pandemic levels, about 1 to 3%. 3% is needed because guess what? Under fifth stimulus, they're going to replace inflation, COLA with inflation as your new benchmark. That means you would get 3 lifts in 1 year. Every time you get a lift up, you never step down. First, your benefits are going to go step up under COLA, that COLA raise of 5.9%. Then fifth stimulus raises your benefits up 1 time. And then the big details is next December 2022, they'd apply the benchmark of inflation. They're going to remove the asset cap, remove the income cap, and remove the marriage penalty. And love is going to win, and you'll be able to do a pair dance at your own wedding and no longer fear loss of benefits. Finally, the importance of third stimulus. Very exciting to bring third stimulus back into the mix of this channel. And the excitement of third stimulus is that it's paying money still. Viewers who have gotten money before, getting additional rounds, and you should as well. Additional rounds of each of these sums of money. If you haven't gotten to the sums of money, get a pen and paper ready because we're going to go over them right now. First, you should get that money for rent. You get the money for rent from your city hall, your city hall, your city house authority, your county hall, your county house authority, your state hall, and your state house authority. And the key words you're going to say are rent assistance because of COVID, mortgage or utility assistance because of COVID. And here are the numbers that viewers were getting several weeks ago. But the numbers are going back even higher than that. Yes, viewers are now getting upwards of $50,000 or more for rent. How are they doing it? By getting multiple rounds. What's important to understand is that the rent is paying multiple rounds across the board. So if your name is on this list, for example, if you're Nisi at 20,000, go get another round of rent. You viewers are getting 2, 3, 4 rounds of rent across the board to carry them into next year. You want to get that. You want to get those money for your utilities. Here we go for utilities. Viewers' utilities have gone up to about $15,000. Reach out to all your utility companies and get that big sums of money. If you have 5 utility companies, reach out to all 5. Then you got to get that SNAP. SNAP is money for food, and everyone's benefits went up 25% last month, a lifetime. That's why Mark's brother-in-law is getting $26,000 a year because of this channel. Finally, of course, you have to get multiple sums of money. So don't settle with just one item. Here are multiple viewers who got multiple items. 32,000. You met Mark just a second ago. He's now at 80,000. Here's Lorraine. She's at 120,000. Here's Mark again. He's now higher than this. He's almost at 90,000. And Johnny is almost at 85,000 across the board. Finally, the nonprofits. The 5 nonprofits help with the money for people into shelters if you're homeless. They also help with clothing and they help with small appliances like furnaces and also refrigerators and portable and small home repairs. They also do rent, utilities, food, and internet, the same items from third stimulus with different eligibilities. So if you have an eligibility problem, consider reaching out to the nonprofits. As soon as third stimulus became a law, people were focused on just a stimulus check. I said, under third stimulus, I can get you big sums of money, about $15,000. On average, I've gotten viewers $45,000 from third stimulus. That's a lot more than a $1,400 stimulus check. And viewers are going back and getting additional sums or rounds of those money. How are they doing this? By becoming a member. The link is under the video. Purple Hawk, Purple Power, Calcino VIP. Members are delivered the newsletter Monday through Friday via me, written by me, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, sent via the YouTube alert system and the LALATE alert system, which is also under the video. It's free to join up. The newsletter features all the big money you can get. Features the nonprofits, also features the money from Treasury, which you should read about before making the call for rent. It'll explain to you what this money is so you know what you're asking for. And that is how these viewers have gotten these sums of money. And you see someone like a Lorraine or Johnny or Mark in those graphics. They didn't call 3 places. They called 7, 8, 9, 10. They got rent from multiple places. They got utilities from different places. And they're continuing to get money across the board. The wonderful Margaret, who's always in the live chats, she every few days just goes and get a couple extra $100 here and there from different programs. It all adds up. If you've had a success story for third stimulus, for any of these sums of money, send me to a private message on social media, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. If I haven't responded before, send it again. I'll feature it now back on air. And consider becoming a member. Get that newsletter as well. With that, let's go into my final commentary as we look forward to a big day with a lot of developing details on this recon. What is my commentary to start the new morning? My commentary is legislation is a body of writing. It's not a verbal. And something is clearly going on. And one thing we've learned from Joe Manchin last week is he really catches words that don't make sense. And I think that's what happened. I think that someone who wrote up this draft of the recon that is currently in the House Rules Subcommittee did not confirm the language that was part of the negotiated agreement. Now, we understand there's a lot of people negotiating. You can make them error. But we repeatedly seen these phrases like permanent, lifetime. Nothing's permanent, $100 billion. And if you see that, then there's a red flag. This is why it's important to get a bill, to actually look at the bill and see if there's something missing, and certainly to add something that's missing. It's also important for advocacy, because if you don't see your provision in there, then you know you need to advocate for it. And that is something that is no different whether you're moderate or progressive, whether you're a senator or House member. As Senator Chris Coons said last week, senators always agree upon framework, but they're not going to agree upon a bill. Or they say they're happy with the framework, but they're not going to agree to the bill until they actually see the bill. The devil is in the details. You have to see the details of the legislation across the board. Very exciting to finally have the recon going for a vote. And the excitement ensues with the fast pace of these negotiations still happening. Expect the negotiations to continue. Meantime, I fully expect throughout the next 24 hours a lot of attempts by broadcast media to take the sensationalism of negotiations and amplify it for ratings, to anchor it into their coverage of governor and mayor races today. You saw a big sensationalism of the Joe Manchin story yesterday that was completely unwarranted. There was nothing sensational about it. It was something he had always said. Why were they doing that? Because they got governor races today. They're going to run live election coverage of governors, and they want to bring you in on one story to keep you there for the other politics story about the governor and city races. That's not my focus here. My focus is the programs. How much is the program paying? When is it programming? When is the program paying? Who gets the money? What is the eligibility zone? What is including? What is it not including? My focus is on the programs. Are they in? Are they not in? And across the board, that's what we'll be focused on throughout the day. Coming up next is noontime LA at 11 a.m. And then we got afternoons LA at 1 o'clock. Evenings LA at 5 o'clock, and the big afternoon show at 3 o'clock. And with that, I want you to subscribe. 400,000 subscribers is a YouTube record. Hit that subscribe button right now. Like the video, 2,000-3,000 likes, and consider becoming a member. Purple Hawk, Purple Power, or Casino VIP. The toast was toasting, the butter was buttering, and the coffee was brewing. And I'll see you next on Newton.